Hi, this is Bob Wells here, and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. This is the show where we hear about people's interests and uncover some fascinating stories at the same time. I hope you enjoy today's show. In today's show, I'm delighted to be joined by Mick Burgoyne. Mick is one half of the folk rock duo Fresh Maggots, which also features Leigh Dolphin. From their first album in 1971, the duo released their second album, Waiting for the Sun, 50 years later. In fact, the duo hold the record for the longest break between recording first and second albums. Hello and welcome to the show, Mick.
Hi, Bob. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's great to have you on. So before we talk about Fresh Maggots, how's it been during this past very, very strange year for you?
It has been a bit strange, hasn't it? Well, of course, we sort of started recording because what happened was we started recording the 4 tracks we were going to do an EP.
Yeah.
And so that went well. We recorded the guide tracks, and then I went to London. We did the electric guitar and the vocals, and Leigh did his acoustic guitar and that. And then it turned out better than we thought. So we thought, well, we'll add another 5 tracks and make it an album.
Yeah.
So, of course, we went back and recorded the guide tracks, and then lockdown happened.
Oh.
We thought that was going to be it. But fortunately, the guide tracks were pretty good. And I've got recording equipment at home.
Yeah.
So I just carried on recording like the electric guitars and all the vocals and everything at home. And then, pinging them over to London and all that. And then Nick, the record producer, was saying yes or no, or no, do that again or what. And then some of them we did on Zoom when we like to do the vocals. We set it up with 2 computers. So one was recording all my vocals and the other was doing the Zoom thing. And so they could give me live feedback, which was usually something like you're getting a bit wurzel.
Oh, really?
Well, what it is, I tend, if I'm not thinking, I tend to roll my R's when I'm singing. So I sound a bit like Wurzel Gummidge. So they say, you're getting a bit Wurzel, so you have to think about it. And so, of course, and then they all went off to Nick and he did his magic things that record producers do, by which time the lockdown had lifted enough that Leigh could go to London and do his bit.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit, but, as far as work and all that, so I've retired, so it hasn't affected me that much, and I'm pretty antisocial. So,
so actually, the lockdown itself, you've adapted with technology. You managed to get the album out, which is
managed
really
to get
great.
the album out. Yeah.
So before we talk more about the story of Fresh Maggots, what about yourself? Could you just tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into music and what you've been doing over the last few years?
Well, there was music in the family. My dad had quite eclectic musical taste. He liked bagpipe music, Mantovani, traditional jazz, blues. That was the thing. He had a good blues collection. My mum was into opera, which wasn't quite so good. But so there was always music about. We always had a radio on. And then when I was about 6 or 7, my dad made me a little, because you couldn't get transistor radios in them days. It was all valve.
Right.
But he made me a little, what was called a cat's whisker radio. I don't know whether you know what they are.
I don't actually know.
It's just a diode, a coil, a tuning condenser, and a great big long aerial, and the other end goes to earth, and it doesn't take batteries or anything, and it just powers a little earphone. But I could get Radio Luxembourg on it.
Oh,
that
really?
was the thing.
See, I remember Radio Luxembourg as a teenager, having a little transistor radio and listening to it coming in and out.
That's it, fading in and out.
That's right. Yeah, and it always they used to have a thing called the power play.
That's right.
On the hour, and it was always a good song, and it always seemed to fade out more then.
Yes.
Half of it. So this particular device you had, is that the same as a crystal set? Because I've heard of a
crystal set. That's exactly the same. Yeah.
My dad had one when I was a little kid. I remember that. Amazing things. Yeah.
So then when I was 12, my parents bought me a guitar for Christmas.
Yeah.
A horrible thing, really. It was a K 6-string acoustic guitar, flat.
I remember K.
Yeah. They weren't best, were they? No. But I mean, I learned to play. I don't tune a day book, but we didn't, book and learned to play. And then I found that a couple of friends in where I lived in Cornish Crescent, they one played bass, and the other, his dad played in a dance band, and he had this huge bass drum, and he used to come around with a bass drum, a snare, and a cymbal. And of course, the first song we ever played together was "You Really Got Me" by the Kinks.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And we used to play in my mum's kitchen because I'd put a pickup on this guitar, and I'd managed to. I found if I juggled my dad's tape recorder about, I could use it as an amp. So we used to play this in the kitchen. That was all right till the neighbour knocked on the door and said, "Look, will you please stop that? You're vibrating my miniatures." Now, we thought she meant her kids. But what was actually happening, she collected these little china ornaments, and they were vibrating along the shelf and committing suicide off the end. So we then had to take all the gear up the youth club and practice up there.
Yeah.
And then we moved then up to the other end of Nuneaton. And I got a part-time job, Saturday job, and saved up and bought my first sort of electric guitar, and just played. And then eventually I put an advert up in the college, see if anybody wanted to form a group, and two guys came around, and one played bass and the other played drums, and that was the start of African Grass.
Right, so that the band, so the first band you had was African Grass.
The real proper band, yeah.
And what type of music did you play?
That was all progressive rock and blues stuff.
Right. So this would have been the late 60s, would it?
Yeah, late 60s, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so we did quite well all around Nuneaton and all that. I think the best gig probably was we played with Atomic Rooster.
Did you?
Yeah, and we used to do one of Atomic Rooster's songs, and Carl Palmer was there, and we said, we do one of your songs, but obviously we won't do it tonight. And he said, no, do it. I want to hear it,
So that's Carl Palmer from Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Yeah, that's right. Because he played drums for Atomic Rooster at the time.
Yeah.
And fair dues to the guy. He sat and watched the whole set, and he came up and gave us tips and sort of Ed, the drummer, we said, "I'm really embarrassed playing," because he did a drum solo in front of you. He said, no, it's not that long ago that I used to drag all my kit down the youth club to practice. And he was a really nice bloke,
Yeah. So it must have been quite interesting watching him listen to you playing his song.
Yes, I know. Well, of course, at that time, they were just organ, bass and drums. They didn't actually have a guitar in the band then. But later on, then they got a guitarist as well. Yeah. So whether I influenced that, I don't know.
Maybe you did. Yeah.
You never know.
Maybe you could have joined them.
Well, I wouldn't be where I am today, would I?
No, exactly. So, I shouldn't have suggested that. So the first band got going.
Yeah.
You were playing locally.
Yeah.
Supporting bands like Atomic Rooster.
Yeah.
What was the next stage in the development of?
Well, I mean, I knew Leigh. I mean, we didn't go to the same school, but we had mutual friends, so I got to know Leigh. And of course, I found that he played guitar. And it turned out he lived literally just around the corner to me. So we just used to meet up and jam. We'd just played for hours together.
So he played a good 6-string like you did? Yeah,
6-string acoustic guitar, mainly fingerstyle. He's more into the fingerstyle acoustic sort of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I've always been a bit of a rocker,
So you were doing the lead solos, maybe?
Yes, yeah. But, it's just jamming. So we'd play blues together and we'd also... And I don't really know how it happened, but it sort of morphed into actually writing songs. Wow. And we'd write all these songs with no intention of doing anything with them. We were just doing it for the fun of it.
Yeah.
And I'd sort of, as I say, added bits to it, and then I wrote lyrics for them, and we added like glockenspiel and tin whistle and all that. But with no intention of actually doing gigs or anything. No. Didn't even enter our head.
Were you the lyricist?
I'm the lyricist, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we then, I was still playing in the other band, I was still playing with African Grass. Yeah. And then what happened was there was a crowd of us went down to Linton and Lynmouth for a couple of weeks holiday. Myself and Leigh took guitars down, and we played some of our songs to our friends down there, some of whom were in a band. And Dennis Burns, one of the members of the band, said, "Look, we've got a gig on the Friday we get back. Come and play at our gig." We sort of, I don't know about that, no idea. I didn't really want to do it. But anyway, they talked us into it. And then sort of a couple of days before the gig, we said, well, we haven't got a name. What we're going to call ourselves? And we said, well, it don't really matter. It's one gig. What's it matter? So I just happened to pick up the Nuneaton Tribune and there was an advert at the top, Riley's Sports Shop, fresh maggots always available. So I said, fresh maggots, that'll do.
So you didn't think, you didn't. The two of you didn't think too deeply about a name then.
No,
it was just
because it was one gig. We thought, it's one gig. What's it matter?
Yeah.
So we did the gig, and then after the gig, another friend of ours came up, played in another band, and said, "Look, we've got a gig tomorrow night. Come and play at ours." So this was like, what was it, February 1970. So this was like second gig in like 2 days. And after that gig, well, Leigh, in fact, during that week, Leigh had come down with a really bad case of shingles. And he said, look, I'll do the gig, but I'm going straight home afterwards.
Yeah.
So we did the gig. He went home. I went back, because I had to take him home in the car. I went back to start packing up, and the guy walks up and says, I'm from Sparta, Florida Music Group. I want you in London next Wednesday signing contracts.
Sorry, what music group was that?
Sparta, Florida. They're a music publishing group. They dealt with people like the Moody Blues were on their books, and people like that.
Yeah.
So the Wednesday, so I then rushed round to Leigh and said, you're not going to believe this, but so the Wednesday after, we were in London signing contracts, and then we then did Mike rang us up. He said, "Oh, well, I've got it." Mike Berry, was our manager then. Yeah. He said, "I've got you a gig in Coventry. I think it was at the Village Club. I think it was called."
Yeah.
But he said there might be some people coming to see you. So went and did this gig, and about part of the way through, there was a massive power cut. And of course, we just carried on, because most of the stuff we do was acoustic.
So this was still just the two of you. You didn't have any bass or drums behind.
No, we never did have. Right. And then, and I'd built a little battery-operated transistor amp just for tuning up in the dressing room and things.
Yeah.
So we brought that on stage. So we just carried on and did the set as normal, because it was only a small club.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, we got a phone call on the Monday from Mike Bray. Said, "Oh my God," he said, "you really impressed these two guys that came to see you. The way you carried on just when the power went off, fantastic. You've got a record deal with RCA."
Wow.
And then within 2 weeks after that, we were in the studio recording.
So how did you both feel then? You know, coming from sort of obscurity, should we say, and then all of a sudden you've got a record deal with RCA. How did you feel?
A bit overawed, really. It was all a bit, because I mean, when you think we did the first gig February 1970, and the album came out October 71.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
It was ridiculous. Yeah. But, because it was all tape in them days, it was all done on. We recorded it at the Radio Luxembourg studios in London.
Did you?
Yeah.
And how long did it take to record the album?
Well, we only did it at weekends.
Yeah.
So we used to go down at the weekends.
Is this because you both had jobs?
No, well, partly, but also because that's when the studio was available. Because during the week they were doing stuff for Radio Luxembourg.
Of course. Yeah. So you had to go to London every weekend.
Yeah, which didn't please the girlfriend, but there we go. Yeah. Although she'd become my wife in the end, so it wasn't that bad. So and so of course all we did was played what we played live. We just did the songs as we'd already done them. They recorded them, individually, and then all the strings and that were put on afterwards.
And these were real strings, not
real strings. All real strings.
I must admit, Mick, listening to your album a couple of times, that there's some lovely string sounds on it.
Yeah, I can't remember the guy's name that did them, but he did some stuff for the Beatles. Yeah, he did stuff. So we're in good company, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then we started getting gigs all around the country, doing the university circuit, all that kind of thing. And then we did actually a live. We were the first band to play live on Radio Luxembourg for the Kid Jensen show.
Yeah.
And then we did a couple of shows for live shows for the BBC, Radio 1. But the most terrifying one was normally when you did live for the radio, it usually meant singing along with the backing tracks or something like that. They weren't completely live. But anyway, they said, "Oh, can you do this one live?" The Aeolian Studios, Studio 2. We said, "Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll bring all the gear down." We set it all up. And then the bloke said, "Right, we'll have to wait a bit. They're recording a classical piece in the next studio." And we thought, well, that's bad if you got bleed through from one studio to the next. Anyway, after a bit, the door opened and in walked all these musicians with dicky bows on and
Yeah.
carrying violins and cellos and sheet music. And we thought, oh my word, they actually mean live, strings and all.
Oh wow! So you played with the orchestra?
Yeah, we'd never played with an orchestra before. Never done anything like that. And they had a conductor.
So is there still a recording of that available?
No, I wish there was. No, we contacted the BBC, but they reckon it'd have been
So
deleted.
just before we talk about a bit more about the evolution of the band, your music has been described as acid folk rock.
Oh,
Would you agree with that?
Not particularly, no.
No. What would you describe your music as? For
Music, just music. I'm a great believer in there's only two types of music: music you like and music you don't like.
Yeah.
I think all other genres are just labels. I don't understand. And the trouble is, people say, "Oh, I like this, but I don't like this sort of music."
Yeah.
Well, if you say that, you're never going to listen to the other sort of music, and you might be missing some really good stuff.
That's a good point. But I mean, listening to it, there is definitely a folky thing. There.
Oh, definitely folk. Yeah, definitely folky.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of rock in there. But, because if all this psychedelic and all that sort of stuff, I mean, it wasn't intentional. We didn't, we just wrote songs. We were 18 when we wrote them. So, You
didn't think too deeply about it. You just got on and...
got on with it, yeah.
And I guess that was a very exciting time in the music. I mean, I sort of got into music in the early 70s and there was a lot of change going on from the 60s and the Beatles and the Stones and then the glam rock and that. But I guess around about that time, must have been quite an exciting time in music.
Yeah, pretty well. Well, I mean, when you think you could go and see any band you wanted, I mean... We used to go to, I don't know whether you know it, Mother's Club in Erdington in Birmingham. We used to go there twice a week. And any band that you ever, you've heard, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, all of these bands, they used to play there when they were coming up. But of course, when they then became famous, they still went back there.
Oh,
and the thing is, you were sitting like 3 foot from the band. And I mean, we went to see Rory Gallagher a couple of times, and I took some photographs, and he says, "Oh, can I have some copies of those?" So the next time we saw him, we went into the dressing room, chatting with him, and give him these photographs. Well, you don't do anything like that anymore, do you? It's not.
No, it's
not like that.
No, that's right. So going back to, you're in with this orchestra doing this recording.
Yes,
it must have sounded fantastic.
Well, it was nerve-wracking. It really was. Oh, we didn't know whether we could do it because we thought we got to keep time with the conductor and all that. But fair dues, we just played what we played normally, and they, and at the end, they had a coffee break, and then they were all coming up saying, "Oh, we love the way you changed from this to this," and giving us all these musical terms and all that. Blah. And Leigh looks at me and says, "You any idea what they're talking about?" I said, "No, I haven't a clue, mate. I haven't a clue." And
so they had the music actually.
They had the sheet music
written out. Oh.
Yeah, they had the sheet music, everything. And then at the end, the last one we did was Frustration with that long lead break with all the strings behind it.
Yeah.
And at the end, one of the guys came up. He said, "We weren't sure you were going to be able to play that." He says, "But that was note perfect. Well done." And I thought, well, half of me's thinking, well, that's really nice. I've got a professional classical musician complimenting me on my playing. And then the other half's thinking, just because I'm a long-haired teenager with an electric guitar, you assumed I couldn't play, So, that was that.
But
yeah.
all in all, it was good. So what happened after that with the band then?
Well, we did a load of gigs here, there, and everywhere, and I mean, like the Marquee Club and places like that. Yeah. But then Mike Berry was one of these people who.
Mike Berry was the manager.
Was the manager, yeah, and we worked for Sparta, Florida, and he sort of, you were flavour of the month for a few months, and then he went on to something else. And to be honest, I got a bit fed up with the music industry. All the bull, I was going to say something there, but all the rubbish that you had to put up with, and every week we were reading stuff in the music press, and you'd be reading quotes from you, and you think, well, I never said that. I didn't, I had an interview with one music journalist in London in a pub in Oxford Street, and he says to me, "Why do you sing in such an English accent?" And I said, "Well, because I'm English."
Yeah. And
because he thought that was absolutely fantastic, and he put it in the article, and I thought, "Oh, this is nonsense." And I think what really finished it was RCA were really difficult about releasing the single. They didn't want to release it at all. Oh. And so, but they did because they were under contract too, and they buried it basically. They didn't publish it at all. And also, I read an article in a magazine about this fantastic record launch party with naked supermodels jumping into a pool and all these famous people there. And I ring Mike. I said, this party, how come we weren't invited? It's our bloody record. He said, oh, it didn't happen. We just made it up.
Oh, really?
And I thought that just about sums up the music industry. So I lost interest and, and then I moved to Wales in 1976. So that was that.
So how long did the band, as it was, Fresh Maggots, once it had been discovered, how long did it go on for?
I don't know, a couple of years, wasn't it? 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
So you were doing it full time?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
Well, what a great experience as a young man.
Yes. And as I say, we still get royalties for songs that we wrote then. The people are still playing it.
So you went to Wales. Were you aware of how popular your music's remained over the years?
No, not really. Well, Leigh kept me informed because he follows it more than I do. But yeah, I mean, he'd say, "Oh, we're on another compilation. I'd buy the compilation and have a look and all this." And then, but there's been a couple of compilations come out which we're rather annoyed about because there was one came out 2018 and one in 19, I think it was, where it says previously unreleased track. And I thought, well, how can they have previously unreleased track? They've all been released. So anyway, Leigh says, I said, it can't be us that got us mixed up with something else. He said, the song was called What I Am. I said, we never wrote a song called What I Am. He says, I know. So anyway, he plays it. He said, it is us. And what it was, when Mike came and saw us, and asked us to come and sign this record deal, this publishing contract on the Wednesday, he asked if there were any songs he hadn't heard. So we did a tape in my bedroom on an old reel-to-reel tape recorder, which is now in the Coventry Music Museum, as it happens. And we'd sent this tape down to Mike Berry with all sorts of songs on. And then he's obviously still got this tape, and this record company have been releasing them as unreleased demos.
Oh, right.
So we're not very happy about that.
No, I bet. So what's the story behind the reformation of the band, Nick?
Well, nothing planned.
No.
It was, I mean, me and Leigh have been mates all the time. I mean, it's not, there was no falling out or anything. No. And then out of the blue, I got an email from a German psychedelic music magazine asking for an interview.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, okay, but how are we going to do it? And they said, well, we'll do it by email. So they sent me this long list of questions. And then Leigh contacts me and says, have you had this big long list of questions? I went, oh, yeah. So anyway, we worked together on it because he remembered things I'd forgotten and vice versa, and we both misremembered things. So at the end of it, we'd come up with a half-decent interview. And at the bottom of the last one, I just put, he's still writing. Yeah. And he came back and he said, well, I've got this idea and that idea. And so I went up to Nuneaton, and I think we recorded 3 guitar tracks. And I took them away and wrote lyrics for them and, played about with them. And they're great. So, of course, then it was as though we'd never stopped writing. It was 3, 3 became 5. And then, we've gone on and I think it's about 15 now.
So it actually just, it wasn't like there'd been a gap of 50 years almost. You just sort of carried on again with each other.
We just carried on as though we'd never stopped. Yeah, it was brilliant. That's and then,
sorry, Mick. Just to go back to I mean, a German magazine got in contact with you.
Yes.
So this sort of says to me that the music's popular right around the world.
Yeah, our biggest fan base in America.
Is it?
We still get played on the radio over in America. Yeah. I know it is, isn't it? When you look at when we get the royalty sheets, it's sort of Spain, Brazil, America, Germany, all over the place.
Yeah,
it is quite amazing.
It's amazing. So you started writing again, and then you thought, well, we might as well do an album.
We thought, should we do what can we do with them? Because I mean, Lisa, it'd be nice to get some recorded. Yeah. But we didn't know how to go about it because I say when we did it before, it was all tape and and it was all down to record companies and that. We didn't know quite how to do it. Well, Leigh then mentioned it to Dennis Burns, who was the guy that asked us to do the first gig we ever did.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I'll ask my son, Nick." I said, why? He said, well, he's a record producer. And so, it's how fortunate, yeah. So, of course, he spoke to Nick, and Nick said, oh, I'd love to do it. My dad used to play your record when I was having a bath as a kid. So that's how it started, yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I know.
So the album came out last year, did it?
It came out, October, November last year, yeah.
Waiting for the Sun.
Waiting for the Sun, yeah.
So the songs are a continuation of the old album?
Not really, no. I think this is what's disappointing to people. People expected something very similar to what we'd done before. But I mean, it's, as you say, it's 49, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But, we've moved on. Everything's moved on, hasn't it? So they're songs that mean something to us now. That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you look at the first two tracks, that it's When I Was Young, which is about your youth and then getting old, and then the next one is I'm Getting Old. It's.
So you're writing from the heart now, as you were then, but obviously things have changed since then.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
And have you got any plans to do any touring at all?
Never say never.
Yeah.
we do get asked, and I don't know, because it's logistics is the problem, because Leigh's like 170 miles away.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how we'd do it, but yeah, it'd be interesting. We'd need a drummer and a bass player, I suppose, now, because the new album's got drums and bass on it and keyboards and things.
So it is something that you would consider?
I'd consider it, yeah.
Have you done any? Oh, I suppose COVID. You haven't really done anything.
No, this is the trouble. We're waiting to write some more songs, because we are toyed with the idea of doing a third album now. Oh, yeah. But I mean, we've got enough songs, but we want to, write some more. Yeah. But of course, we thought we'd wait until all the lockdowns finish, so we haven't got to mess about with it.
Yeah. Well, I have to say it's fascinating. I mean, normally there's this thing in the industry, isn't there, about the second album? And how,
I know. Yes, I know.
50 years is an amazing feat. In terms of music itself, contemporary music, I mean, things have changed an awful lot in 50 years.
Yes,
and I've seen that in my time. And so, what do you think of today's music?
It's music. I mean, I won't slag anybody. If anybody's producing music, I'm not going to slag them off. Fair dues to the guy, whoever they are. As long as people are listening to it, as long as people get, some kind of emotion from it and enjoy it, then as far as I'm concerned, it's valid. Yeah. I don't sort of knock anybody.
No. And what sort of music are you listening to these days, Mick?
I still listen to Radio 1 quite a lot, funny enough. Yeah. And in fact, I was listening today, and was it the 1972, their new one?
1975.
5 Minute My Love, is it called? Or something like that, 1975, yeah. I mean, that's brilliant album.
Yeah.
Brilliant record. I mean, there's some great stuff about the Foo Fighters' new one. Well, they're a bit formulaic, aren't they?
Yes, they've got a brand, haven't they?
They've got a brand, yes. let's flog it till it, yeah. But yeah, I mean, a lot of music now. All right. They write a line that sounds good and repeat it 50 times, and then. Yeah. But the thing is, if it's dance music, that doesn't matter, does it? Because when you're dancing, you're not listening to the lyrics, are you? No.
And what advice could you give somebody? I mean, you've obviously been in the music industry at a sort of fairly tender age. If there's somebody listening to this podcast who's in their teens and they want to make it in the music industry, what sort of advice would you give them?
Well, if you've got a product and you think you're good, then push it, stick at it. You got that many platforms now to put your music on. From SoundCloud and Spotify and all these things. You got loads of ways of getting your music out there, and just do it. But what I would say is, don't go into it thinking you're going to make a fortune and it's going to be easy, because it's going to be hard work, and your chances of making a fortune are slim.
Yeah.
There's not that many that do. And to be honest, what I would say is, once it stops being fun, stop.
Yeah.
Because if it's not fun, then what's the point of doing it?
What other projects have you got coming up, Mick?
Well, at the moment, I've just moved house.
Right. So you've been absorbed moving house.
I've just moved out. Everything's still in boxes. I've got builders in, and the wife's got a list a mile long of things that need doing. But fortunately, it means I'm going to have my own music room.
Oh, wow.
So after next week, I'll be setting up my own music room. So that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, excellent. So where can people find out more about Fresh Maggots?
They can go to our website, freshmaggots.co.uk, or we've got a Facebook page, Fresh Maggots on Facebook. But if you go to the website, all the links for because we're on all the download sites, Spotify, all of the iTunes, the lot.
Well, I'll put all those links on the show notes.
Yeah, lovely.
For listeners.
Brilliant.
Well, this has been a great conversation, Mick. Thanks ever so much for coming on.
No problem. I'm glad you've enjoyed it. I certainly have. Right, thank you.
It's been good. You have been listening to Undercurrent Stories. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share the show link to your friends and family, and if you have 60 seconds, I will be most grateful if you would please rate and review. To hear more episodes, please subscribe to the show and visit undercurrentstories.com. If you leave your email in the link, we will notify you as soon as new episodes are released. Also, check out our social media links, details of which can be found on the show notes. Until next time, this is Bob Wells wishing you all the very best.